All right, and for our last portion of the 102 module, we're going to look at RPM and Yum. As I was mentioning in the last module, Debian has its own separate package management tools, dpackage and apt-get. And then we have RPM and Yum for other flavors of Linux like Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Fedora, Ubuntu, and SUSE, as well as CentOS. So I will be switching back to the CentOS virtual machine here shortly. In any case, we need to know how to install and remove packages with these tools, how to look at their dependencies, some of the files that they contain, and that's more or less the same kind of commands and or functions with those commands that we were looking at just now with dpackage and apt-get. So we'll cover the RPM commands, some of the Yum commands, and Yum downloader, and we'll look at also some of the config files and some of the directories. Similarly to Debian packages, we have a website for finding RPMs, and RPM is the Red Hat Package Manager. Very easy to use. There's some very simple examples that I'll show you here in a minute. But we see where our database of packages are. It's a little bit different file structure than what we'd expect for the Debian packages. But again, it's a different distribution of Linux, so that's expected. If we look at some of our options, we can see that this is very self-explanatory. I just use -I for install. Strangely, there's -E for remove. You would think it'd be -R, but that's not the way they built it. I can reinstall and upgrade packages with the -F and U options. And then I have lots of querying possibilities. I can look at my packages, look at my config files, look at the files that make up the package, very similar to the details types of information I was looking at with the Debian tools. I can even query to see if I've got a package that includes a file. And I also have wildcards available to me. So some nice options there. So let's have a look. We'll switch back to CentOS. And if I run rpm-qa, I can query all of my packages. And you see that we get the full name of the package when we do this. RPM works a little bit different than the dpackage and apt-get commands as far as the kind of output that you get. So I'm going to run this again, and this time I'm going to grep and see if I have nmap installed. I think I installed it, but maybe I didn't. Okay, currently it's not installed. So I could use rpm-i if I knew where the package was located, and I probably don't have it on my system at this point. Oh, that's not true. There the RPMs are. They are found on my mounted CD-ROM for the install. So I do have packages I could run, and also I see netcat, but I'm going to install this one. So effectively, what we're seeing here is that the install CD is acting as a local repository. So let's run rpm-i. Oh, you know what it complained about? It's the spaces in the file name. Little details like that can really come back and bite you. No, we're still getting a problem. Oh, I've got a dependency problem. Okay. It looks like I need to install netcat first, which is fine. I can adapt to that really quick. And this is, part of the normal activity when you're working with Linux systems. So if you haven't installed something before, you're doing some work and you realize, oh, I've got a dependency problem, I had better read those error messages carefully And it's probably going to complain about the spaces in the file name. Let's change that. Putting double quotes around it should fix that problem. Okay, so now we see that netcat installed silently. I didn't use a V option. And there's the original nmap that we wanted to run. Let's go ahead and install this. Now that installed correctly as well. And now if I run my query again, I can look for nmap. And we see I've got the two components, nmap by itself and the netcat tool. So just, again, it's a small thing to install, very simple. But we already see now if I've got a dependency, I try to install something, it won't work until I get that dependency satisfied. I'm basically creating the foundation for the other package to install on top of. Now I can look at some of the configuration files. I can try to do this for nmap. No config files are found for that. That's okay. I can look at the files that are part of the package. So similar to what I did with the apt get or dpackage commands, I can run rpm-ql. Q for the query, L for list, and just give it the name of the package. Now I can also verify the dependencies that we just saw a minute ago by running the -q for query and capital R. And it tells me I've got quite a few things. There's the one that was holding up my install, but there's lots of other items here, different libraries, crypto libraries, and some other items. So one other thing we'll try here is I can do a find. It's probably in user bin again. Yep. So I can run rpm-qf, so query for a file. And it tells me that if I query this particular binary with user bin nmap, that this is the package that installed it. So these are very handy commands to be familiar with, because as an administrator, as you're adding and removing software, you're going to have a lot of instances where you need to move things around and figure out what your dependencies it might be and so on. All right, then we move along to Yum, the Yellow Dog Updater Modified. Yum looks a little bit more like aptitude. If you'll notice in the table here, I can run very easy to use commands just in a more natural way than some of the -Rs and -I and so on. And that seems to be a recent trend in the last decade or so with Linux, making all the utilities more user-friendly by having them function more like natural language. So my repository for Yum is in yum.repos.d underneath Etsy. And as we can see, I can run my installs, updates, check updates, just like I can with the other package management tools. And I can also do my removes and so on. And so we'll play around with this for just a moment. First, we'll have a look at the repository. Oh, sorry, I was supposed to go to that directory first. And we can see these are all the repositories that are listed underneath. And these are the ones that came standard. I think I might have modified one of these, the EPEL possibly. But we'll see that a little bit later when we're looking at some other material. But for instance, we'll look at the base repository. And we can see these are the different URLs that are configured by default to get all of our packages. Just a handful are needed, and that gives me most of what I need. But then I've got other things too, debug, EPEL repository packages. These are other things that you might need in certain situations. But just to show how easy this is to use, I'm going to go ahead and install nmap. I think I might have already done it. No, I must have removed it. Okay. So yes, it says it is already installed and it's at the latest version. So thankfully it tells me that it's already there. But just as easily I can do a remove. Usually with Yum, one nice feature that we see is that we also get a transaction test for almost all packages. So it tries to do a quick little check to make sure that the package actually works as it's supposed to. So I can now that that's actually been removed, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall it, and then we'll look at some of the details. So it goes out and checks a bunch of my repositories and finds a suitable package, asks me if it's okay. I will say yes. And then it goes ahead and downloads that, does my transaction test, make sure the Nmap actually works, and I can run it and get my usage statement. So I know it's functional. I can do my list command. So yum list for Nmap shows me any of the installed packages related to this, and there we have the results. Can also run an info command, and this gives me a little bit more detail about certain things. For instance, I can tell what version I'm running, how big it is, maybe some other description information. Now, the developer of the package has to enter all this detail in order for the query to actually produce the results. But it is nice to be able to get a little bit extra information. I can also run yum to check for updates. And if I run this without any commands or any command line options, it'll try to look for updates for all of my packages. This system was just recently built, so it looks like nothing is requiring updates at the moment. Now, switching back from Yum, we're going to also look at RPM, because you do need to know how to look at the dependencies. We saw this a little bit earlier, but it's good to get a little bit of a refresher here. The Q stands for query, C for config files, package details, package files, and dependencies. Those are the main things that we're mostly interested in. And as you saw when I tried to install Nmap earlier, if a dependency exists, the software will tell me that that I need to make an additional step to install another package, in this case, in order to satisfy that requirement. So maybe I find that I've got a binary file and I don't know what package it belongs to. That's why we run the -q with the F command for file. And the way to think about this is that whether you know the name of the package, or you know the name of a file, or you know the name of some component that's part of a package, you should be able to do your searches using all those different perspectives to make sure you're dealing with the right files for your administrative tasks. So in this section, we talked about the RPM commands, some of the yum commands. We looked at the repository file, or the repository directory. We could look also at the configuration file for yum. It's not very large, but it tells me some things, some of my configurable settings. And like all configuration files for Linux, they should be found underneath the etc directory. All right, that gets us to the end of Module 102. Next, we're going to tackle some GNU commands and other Linux commands that you need to know for the exam. See you there. Thank you.